You're not going to believe what just happened in D.C. I mean, yes, we've seen our fair share of political drama lately, but this was something else. It all went down yesterday afternoon in room 216 of the Hart Senate office building, during what was supposed to be a routine bipartisan roundtable on public safety funding. Cameras were rolling, microphones were hot. The whole thing was meant to be boring, the kind of stuff that barely makes the news ticker. But then JD Vance decided to make it personal. Let me set the scene. The Ohio senator, who's been riding high on his working-class conservative brand, leaned into the mic, glanced sideways at Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and said, with a smirk, "Some members of this committee seem more interested in defending criminals than protecting communities." Oof. Now, anyone who follows Crockett knows one thing. She doesn't let that kind of jab slide. You could feel the tension shift instantly. Chairs shuffled. Staffers looked up from their phones. Reporters started typing faster. Crockett, cool as ever, adjusted her mic. No theatrics, no raised voice, just precision. "Senator Vance," she began, "I'd rather defend the Constitution than defend fear-mongering dressed up as policy. But maybe that's just the difference between someone who's lived the consequences and someone who writes books about them." Boom. The room froze. A couple of aides coughed. One Republican senator visibly winced. Vance tried to laugh it off. "Well, I guess I touched a nerve." But Crockett wasn't done. "You didn't touch a nerve, Senator," she said. "You just exposed your own ignorance. Because if you actually listened to communities, instead of using them as campaign props, you'd know that public safety isn't about more prisons. It's about more opportunity, more trust, more accountability, something your policies seem allergic to. And here's the wild part. This wasn't some closed-door moment. It was streaming live on C-SPAN. The clip went viral within minutes. X, lit up like wildfire. The hashtag. So here's where things took a sharp left turn. After that exchange, most politicians would have smiled for the cameras and played it safe, not Jasmine Crockett. Less than 2 hours after the roundtable ended, her team dropped a 13-page policy memo. Yes, a memo. Breaking down exactly how JD Vance had repeatedly voted against funding for urban crime prevention programs. It was surgical. The first page alone had 3 receipts. Vance voted no on the 2023 Community Policing Initiative. He co-sponsored a bill to divert federal funds away from mental health support in underserved areas. And, get this, he skipped a vote on increased funding for anti-domestic violence shelters. On the same day, he gave a speech about protecting American families. Twitter exploded again. Users started posting side-by-side clips, Vance talking about law and order, and Crockett calmly destroying that narrative line by line. One user tweeted, "Jasmine Crockett just turned JD Vance into a TED Talk on how not to debate a trial lawyer. Yikes." It got over 1.2 million views in 6 hours. And JD? Oh, JD was scrambling. He went back on Bobby Slater's podcast that same evening trying to spin it. These leftists don't care about real Americans. They're just obsessed with gotcha moments and internet points. But it was too late. The moment had passed, and Crockett had won it. Even mainstream media couldn't ignore it anymore. MSNBC ran a segment titled, "Crockett versus Vance, Who's Actually Keeping America Safe?" CNN's Don Lemon, yes, he's back, said, "That's what happens when you underestimate a woman who's both a congresswoman and a former defense attorney. Rookie mistake." But wait, it gets better. Because while the headlines were all about that explosive exchange, something else was happening behind the scenes. Apparently, a staffer from Crockett's office received a mysterious email late that night. Anonymous sender. No subject line. Just a single sentence. "Check the grants JD blocked in Cincinnati. Follow the money." And oh boy, they did. Next morning, Crockett tweeted a single screenshot of a public grant database showing that JD Vance had personally lobbied against a $3.2 million federal grant aimed at gun violence intervention in his own home state. Her caption, "So much for protecting the people." That tweet. Over 90K retweets in 12 hours. And now, journalists, watchdog groups, even other members of Congress, they're digging deeper. Some are saying this could be the start of a mini ethics scandal for Vance. Others, they're just enjoying the show. But one thing is crystal clear. Jasmine Crockett didn't just shut him down. She flipped the script. And folks, this story's just getting started. So, where do we go from here? Well, JD Vance went silent for almost 48 hours. No press conferences, no tweets, no retweets, not even a casual post about woke universities or Biden's border disaster. Radio, silence. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett? Oh, she was everywhere. She showed up on the raid out with Joy Reid that Thursday night and dropped fire. Joy asked her if the confrontation with Vance was planned. Crockett just smiled and said, "Planned? No. Anticipated? Absolutely. I don't walk into any room unprepared, especially when I know the gaslighting's gonna be thick." The audience applauded. Reid grinned. Then Crockett leaned in. Look, JD can say whatever he wants on his little podcasts. But when it comes to actual legislation, receipts matter. And frankly, if he doesn't want to be called out for failing his constituents, maybe he should stop failing them. Boom. Another viral moment. The clip made it to TikTok, where Gen Z turned it into a remix over trap beats. You know it's serious when teenagers are dancing to your congressional clapback. But not everyone was dancing. Behind closed doors, several GOP aides reportedly urged Vance to either respond forcefully or pivot fast. So what did JD Vance do? He tried to pivot, badly. The next morning, he held a press event in a local Ohio church, surrounded by hand-picked faith leaders, and gave a 10-minute monologue about restoring values in Washington. But the press wasn't biting. They asked about the Cincinnati grant. They asked about the skipped domestic violence vote. They asked about Crockett's memo. And JD, he deflected, again and again. "I'm not here to play petty politics," he said. "I'm here to talk about the future of families in Ohio." One reporter shot back, "Don't those families deserve federal support, especially when facing gun violence?" Vance paused, then answered, "There are always trade-offs in government." Yikes. That soundbite? It was everywhere by noon. The narrative was slipping, fast. And Jasmine? She wasn't done. She took to Instagram Live that evening, in a car, no makeup, completely unscripted, and somehow even more effective. "I don't need a stage," she said. "I don't need lights. I don't need a choir behind me. What I need is truth. And the truth is, JD Vance doesn't care about real safety. He cares about political theater. But baby, I don't do theater. I do justice." Yes, she did. Comments poured in like wildfire. "Preach, Congresswoman. This woman is a national treasure. Drag him again, Queen." And the kicker? That live stream outperformed Vance's entire press event. In reach, in engagement, in influence, the tides were shifting. By now, JD Vance was learning the hard way. You don't come for Jasmine Crockett unless you're ready to get torched, publicly. But what really turned the heat up wasn't just social media or the press, it was his own party. Because somewhere between the viral clips, the grant scandal, and the press flop, GOP donors started asking real questions. And when the money people start dialing your cell, you know it's bad. One leaked message from a major Ohio fundraiser read, "JD, I supported your Senate run to fight for Ohio, not to get dragged on TikTok by a congresswoman. Get it together." Ouch. To make matters worse, a few younger Republicans, the ones eyeing 2028, started subtly distancing themselves. Senator Tom Cotton issued a vague tweet. Conservatives must stay focused on solutions, not distractions. No names mentioned, but we all knew what that meant. Even Fox News wasn't offering full cover. On the 5, Jesse Waters asked, "Why didn't JD just hit back harder? She's not bulletproof. Fight back." But Geraldo Rivera snapped back. "Because she had facts, that's why." And that's when the whispers began. By Friday, Hill insiders were buzzing about a closed-door Senate GOP meeting where Vance reportedly got grilled by party leadership. One aide claimed Vance tried to downplay the Crockett feud as just noise. But McConnell apparently wasn't amused. "This isn't noise," he allegedly said. "It's a credibility problem, and it's bleeding into Ohio." Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett, she was thriving. CNN booked her for a Sunday panel. She went on Pod Save America and absolutely owned the room. And in one jaw-dropping moment, she said, "JD wants to be a culture warrior? Cool, but I'm out here being a policy sniper, and I don't miss." The audience erupted. Clips went viral again. Even moderate voters, independents who don't usually jump into partisan fights, started showing support. One independent voter from Columbus told the Washington Post, "I didn't know who Crockett was before this week. Now, I'd vote for her over half the Senate." But here's where things really shifted. A Democratic super PAC launched a digital ad blitz, using nothing but Vance's own quotes and Crockett's rebuttals. It was called Facts versus Fiction, the JD Vance Accountability Project. The ads ran across swing state platforms, especially Ohio, and the numbers were brutal. Vance's approval rating among undecided Ohio voters dropped 8 points in 5 days. And through it all, Crockett kept it classy, but firm. On Face the Nation, she said, "I don't enjoy sparring. I enjoy truth. But if sparring is what it takes to expose what's really happening in Washington, I'm happy to keep my—" By the start of the next week, it was clear. JD Vance was no longer in control of the narrative. His media team scrambled, trying to line up friendly outlets. He even attempted a pre-recorded sit-down with a conservative magazine. But it fell flat. Too polished, too careful. And worst of all, too late. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett, she wasn't just responding anymore, she was leading. On Monday morning, she announced something no one expected. "I'm formally requesting a Senate Ethics Committee review into JD Vance's handling of federal grant funds, particularly those tied to public safety and community violence prevention. Let the facts speak." Mic dropped. The headlines exploded. Crockett files ethics complaint against Vance. Scandal deepens. Texas Democrat escalates battle. Is Vance in trouble? Receipts, not rhetoric. Crockett demands Senate accountability. And just like that, the story shifted from viral feud to full-blown investigation. Legal experts weighed in. Ethics lawyers started analyzing budgets. And X, went into a frenzy. JD Vance's office released a one-line statement. "This is nothing more than political theater from a radical leftist." But voters weren't buying it anymore, especially in Ohio. Local newspapers like the Cleveland Plain Dealer and the Columbus Dispatch began running editorials demanding transparency. Senator Vance owes the people of Ohio answers. If he mishandled funds, even negligently, that's not a partisan issue. That's public trust. And you know what's worse for a politician than being wrong? Being boring. By this point, JD Vance was being both. While Crockett was pulling in millions of views, trending on TikTok and Twitter, inspiring young voters and firing up policy debates, Vance was giving vague interviews in empty rooms. At one rally in Toledo, only 23 people showed up. Most were reporters. A few were staff. And as if on cue, Crockett posted a savage Instagram story of her walking past a packed community town hall in Dallas with the caption, "When you speak truth, the people show up. The comments? Unhinged. Tell JD we said hi. Ohio wants to trade senators. Crockett 2028. And then came the real moment. On a Thursday night town hall, broadcast live, Crockett was asked, "Congresswoman, what's your message to JD Vance if he's watching?" Without missing a beat, she said, "My message, do better, or get out the way." She smiled. The crowd roared. And just like that, the saga was over, for now. If you're tired of politics as usual, if you live for moments when truth cuts through the noise, this is the place. Subscribe now for more raw political showdowns, unfiltered moments, and the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Because here, we don't follow the narrative, we break it. Hit that button. Let's keep it real.